Welcome back to Devblog Chats. It's me, Many Miles Away, and today we're going to be discussing a overview of the upcoming update 1.59 Flaming Arrows. Now, a little bit of a short disclaimer here. I'm not going to be talking too much about the coming aircraft in the update because that's really not what's exciting me. So for those of you who airplanes is your jam, well, this video probably isn't going to be for you. So I'm going to go ahead and go through the vehicles here as they go on the Flaming Arrows sneak peek page on their news website. If you guys want to go and check that out, I will leave a link in the video description. So the first one up on our list is quickly the T-29. I already covered this in another Devblog Chats video. Again, I'll put the link in the video description, or I'll put an annotation up on screen if you guys want to go and check out that Devblog Chats video, so I'm not going to talk about that too much. We already know that's coming. 6.7 heavy tank, premium, for the US tech tree. Next up that we've got here is the LVTA-1. LVTA-1 is going to be a reserve tank, and it's also amphibious, so that's going to be pretty interesting. It'll add a nice dynamic to the race car of vehicles that the Americans tend to start out with. Alright, the next one on our list here is going to be the M48A1 Patton. People have been asking for this one for a little while. The M48 is going to be the transitional vehicle between the M47 and the M60. Now, for those of you who have come over from World of Tanks, you will know that the M48 is equipped with the 105mm gun as its top gun. Now, in War Thunder, that is not going to be the case. In War Thunder here, it is equipped with a 90mm gun, which is what it was equipped with initially. This was going back to the whole idea that the Americans considered that 90mm was good enough. As a result, especially stock, it's going to have the same stock gun performance as the M26 Pershing, the M46 Patton 1, the M47 Patton 2, and all the shells that you get in between there. This is definitely going to be one of those tanks that's going to be fantastic when it's fully upgraded, but the grind to get there is going to be very painful. It has the same exact shells as the M47, so its stock shell is pretty bad. The M82 round is useful, but has very terrible penetration. The APCR rounds are not very good because you're facing sloped armor, and APCR is terrible against sloped armor, and doesn't get fantastic until you unlock the final heat shell, which has just over 300mm of penetration. I think it's 320 or something like that. However, what you do get is a tank with very decent power to weight ratio and a much better armor protection than the M47 does. So for those of you who are driving the M47, you might want to hurry up with your grind and get that done and get the M60 before this thing comes out. Otherwise, it's going to take a little bit longer. Now, for the last of the American tanks, we move on to the new Tier 5 American light tank, the M551 Sheridan. I got an opportunity to test this on the dev server last week, and I can tell you, it's a lot of fun. It's an interesting tank, and it plays a lot differently from the M41 and the T-92 before it, but it is definitely a worthy successor to those two vehicles. The best way I can describe this thing stock is a light KV-2 that drives around at like 72 kilometers an hour. Its stock ammunition is Heat FS with 351mm of penetration at all ranges, because Heat gets penetration all ranges, just the way it works. And it also obviously gets a 152mm high explosive shell. Its armor is not great. It's a light tank, it's not meant to be taking hits, but this thing's job is to scout and to deliver massive damage with a single shot. It's also more than capable of doing this because, well, it's got a Shillelagh anti-tank missile that you can lock for it. Now, for clarification, this missile is a second-generation missile, but it also has the least penetration of all of the other ATGMs that are being added to War Thunder. Only 431mm of penetration, whereas all the others have 500mm plus. Now, just in case you don't know what a first and second-generation missile is and what the difference is between the two, the first-generation missiles are only going to be controlled by your movement keys, W, A, S, and D, or your arrow keys, and the second-generation ATGMs are going to be able to be controlled with the mouse. Since the Sheridan gets the second generation of ATGMs, it's going to be much easier for the Sheridan to hit targets with its ATGMs over longer distances and in general compared to the first generation missile tanks. So that's all for the Americans. Let's go check out their opposite number in the USSR. So the Soviet tanks in general are getting 4 new vehicles and 1 updated model. I'm just going to go in the order that they were announced. So starting up first is going to be the KV-2 ZIS-6. This is going to be just a KV-2, but instead of the 152mm dirt howitzer, it's going to have a 107mm ZIS-6 gun in it. This is going to be a Tier 3 premium vehicle, not available for research. You're going to have to buy it for Golden Eagles, and I can definitely see this thing making an impact in Tier 3 battles. Now, when you get into high caliber, high velocity anti-tank guns, especially at that lower tier, the biggest question and first question that tends to come to my mind is, what is its reload like? Well, from what I remember testing on the dev server, its reload was something around the 14 to 15 second range. Now, I'm not sure if that was the minimum or if that was the top upgraded reload. I have a feeling that's the minimum reload, and it will only get better from there. But as for battle rating, I have a feeling that it's going to be around the 5.3 battle rating mark. Other than the gun, this is just another KV-2, and there's nothing too special about it. Up next, we got a pair of new vehicles, the ASU-57 and the ASU-85. The ASU-57 is going to be a small little portable, in real-life airdroppable but War Thunder. It's basically going to be a non-turreted Hellcat for the Russians. Now, this little 57mm cannon is going to be semi-automatic, which means, for those of you who don't know, a semi-automatic gun in artillery terms means that every time you fire a shell, it ejects the spent case out from the breech. This is advantageous because it allows you to literally be standing there with the next round ready to go, and as soon as the gun fires, you throw another one in and the breech closes automatically as the round slams home. As a result, you can sustain a substantially high rate of fire. While I was driving my Sheridan around on the dev server, I saw one of these things driving away, and it looks like a tiny little go-kart, for lack of a better term. I mean, these things are tiny, and they are going to be very difficult to detect in the coming update. And I can easily foresee them being one of the most annoying opponents to face in the coming update as well. And for those of you who are wondering about gun performance, this vehicle's gun is going to perform very, very similarly in terms of penetration and ballistic characteristics to the ZIS-2. Now, the next vehicle in the ASU family is going to be the ASU-85. This is going to be placed, I believe, after the PT-76, whereas the ASU-57 is going to be placed before the PT-76. The ASU-85 is built on the same chassis as the PT-76, but features a much more powerful 85mm gun. It also has much better armor than the PT-76. Despite being air portable, its frontal armor plating is 45mm thick, sloped back at a steep angle. Now, will this protect you at the higher tier games that this thing is going to be playing at? I don't think so. However, it's still going to be a nice vehicle, and I can definitely see a lot of people playing with this thing, especially because it's going to be getting some high-penetration heat shells, which are going to be interesting. And it being a post-war design, it's going to get access to those post-war shells as well. As for Russian ATGM vehicles, they are getting the IT-1, which I have already discussed in the ATGM's Devblog chats. Now, as for this vehicle's placement on the tech tree, it's going to be after the Su-12254, which is the current Tier 5 SPG for the Russians. Like the Sheridan, it is also a second-generation missile, so you're going to be able to control it with the mouse. However, the IT-1's ATGM is substantially more powerful with 500mm of penetration. Now, the major downside to this is that, well, it is a automatic loader system, so there's no way to improve the reload time on it, and on top of that, there's no gun. The only other thing you have for self-defense is a 7.62mm machine gun, and, well, that's not going to help you if you get into a close-in dogfight. So, the IT-1 is not going to be able to defend itself very well at close range, at least from what I can see in the times that I've been able to test the ATGMs. Now, this brings us on to our final vehicle in the USSR line as far as tanks go. And that's the IS-3 is getting an updated model in this patch. Now, updated model, that could mean a lot of things. It appears that they've just completely updated the standard model of the vehicle in-game. I don't think they've updated any armor values, but I could be wrong about that. And just for reference, here is a standard IS-3, and then here is the upgraded IS-3. I've overlaid the two images there so you can kind of see a little bit of the difference. I've tried to take the picture as best of an angle as I can, but it's very difficult to do it. Especially when you're just trying to compare pictures. Alright, you've taken a good look, and now it's time to get on to the Germans. Now to adjust your sets, that is a German KV-2 754R. It's a slightly modified KV-2. They've added Commander's cupola from Panzer Mark IV on the roof of the turret. It provided the tank's commander with excellent visibility. The outer ammo rack on the tank's rear received additional ammunition capacity, and the basket was mounted on the rear of the hull to provide for extra additional storage. Should mention, however, that this is a premium tank. It is not researchable, and it is going to be at Tier 3, and it's following the pattern of captured enemy vehicles. So you've got the KV-1B 756R, which is a heavily modified KV-1 with a German 75 in it, and a German Commander's cupola, again, mounted on the top of the vehicle. Also got aircraft like the British Typhoon and the German captured P-47 Thunderbolt. All in all, it's good to see the derp game coming to the Germans. Also following the pattern of pay-to-win tanks is the T-34 747R. This appears to be an up-armored T-34 1942 that the Germans have captured and repurposed for their own use. Again, this is also going to be premium, however, we don't know much on this vehicle as it hasn't been mentioned in any dev blogs yet. We will have to see in the future. Before we get right onto the good stuff, I think it deserves an honorable mention. The Panzerkampfwagen Ausführung B is being introduced as a reserve tank for the Germans, which is really, really nice to see. Their current reserve tanks right now have autocannons and not really anything suited for anti-tank work. I mean, I guess the Panzer 35T is there, but the Germans really need a straight-up Panzer, and this is going to provide that for the newer players coming into the game. Now that we come to the very first vehicle that I am actually really excited for, and that is the Sturer Emil. You may have seen in my Devblog chats video and my, I think it was the T29 video, I guessed ahead on some of the vehicles that were going to be added into the game, and it turns out I was right. The Sturer Emil and the M551 Sheridan, they were pure speculation at the time, are going to be added in the next patch. And the Sturer Emil is a sort of big brother to the Dicker Max at Tier 3. It's going to be the Tier 4 open-top tank destroyer, and it's also going to follow the tradition of having really big guns at really low tiers. Well, at this point, it's not particularly low tier, but in this case, the Sturer Emil is armed with an adaptation of the 128mm anti-aircraft gun. Yes, the Germans did have 128mm anti-aircraft guns. And this is just a straight-up adaptation. It's not the exact Jagdtiger's gun, like I thought it was going to be. As a result, it has slightly less penetration, but it has the same killing power. I think the top ammunition on it had somewhere around 239mm of penetration. So that will definitely be interesting. Also, this vehicle does have 15 degrees of gun depression, and it doesn't have any armor. So, any fighter pilots who love strafing open-top tank destroyers, rejoice. This thing is going to be a lot of fun to kill. Now, for whatever reason, while I was on the dev server, I had the bright idea of doing the only thing that made any sense while I was there, and that was to take a picture of the Sturer Emil's gun depression. So here you go. There it is in all its glory. And you can actually see that the 128mm gun breech actually sticks out the top of the vehicle, much like the Dicker Max does. I mean, and that thing is massive, let me tell you. Now, as for the last vehicle I'm going to talk about, as for the Germans, that is going to be the Raketenjagdpanzer 2, or Jagdpanzer 2. And I've already given a short talk on this vehicle. It's an improvement on the Jagdpanzer 4-5 in an attempt to add anti-tank guided missiles to the vehicle and give it more tank killing power as armor became more and more advanced. If you guys want to check that sort of thing out, check out my ATGMs video. I will put a link in the video description, like I said before. And let's move on to the next nation here, and that is going to be Britain. Now, this is the last nation I'm going to be talking about in today's episode, and we're going to wrap this up with a couple of vehicles from Britain. Both of these are premium vehicles. Britain is not getting any researchable vehicles in this next patch with regard to ground forces. The first one I want to quickly go over is going to be the Cromwell Mark V RP-3. This is going to be a 3.7 battle rating premium vehicle, and all it is just, it's a post-war modification of the Cromwell medium tank with 4 76mm armor-piercing rockets. So hooray for British rocket tanks. Speaking of more rocket tanks, the British also get something else, though it's not entirely British at this point. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a STRV-81, and I know a lot of you are looking at this going, well, that looks a lot like a Centurion Mark III. It is a Centurion Mark III, it's just Swedish, that's all. That's literally the only difference. The other obvious thing of note is that this vehicle carries ATGMs. Now, we haven't seen this vehicle too much. The only time it's ever been posted up until now is on the Devblog, on some of their previous streams, and on their update 1.59 teaser picture. Now, these are first generation ATGMs, so they will be guided by the WASD keys or your arrow keys. Unlike the Generation 2 ATGMs, these have much higher penetration. These have the highest penetration of any projectile in War Thunder currently, and that is 600mm of armor. The Raketenjagdpanzer 2 also has very, very similar ATGMs with the exact same penetration performance. This makes it very, very dangerous if an operator can guide these missiles onto the target. And as of now, the fact that they are first generation ATGMs is really their only balancing feature. I mean, and I've tried to guide stuff onto the target. It is not easy. It's going to take a very, very skilled operator in order to make these things work. Also, it's worth noting that on this vehicle, you only get 3 of them, so you get 3 chances to hit somebody with these ATGMs, which may not kill them. They're not guaranteed to kill somebody. And once you've used all 3 of those ATGMs, you are literally just another Centurion Mark III, except you have a premium bonus. So that about wraps up today's video on our Devblog chats, Frantically Review Everything edition. If you guys haven't quite fallen asleep right now, and you guys want to hear more of me talking for whatever reason about stupid things regarding video games, check out my other Devblog chats videos. I will leave a link in the video description, or I will post a annotation up on screen for you to follow to. And leave a like if you liked it, leave a dislike if you didn't like it. Just leave a comment on what you are most excited about in the upcoming update 1.59. This is many miles away, signing off. Have a good day.